Some men don't lose their identity in failure. They lose it in success. They build the body, earn the title, protect the famous, serve their country, sit in church. They're still a boy who feels unseen, unprotected, and unnamed. What happens when abuse shapes your identity before you even know who you are? What happens when addiction hides behind discipline? When faith is real, but so is the trauma. Today's conversation isn't about image. It's about what happens when the mask collapses and the man has to decide who he really is. If you've ever looked strong on the outside but felt fractured underneath, this one is for you. Welcome to Unmasked, where we take off the filters and get real about faith, failure, and finding freedom. I'm your host, Wesley Farnsworth, a dad, veteran, author, and a man who's learned that God does his best work in the middle of our mess. Each episode, we have honest conversations with people who have walked through addiction, pain, or doubt, and with pastors, leaders, and everyday believers who are learning to live and lead authentically. So take a breath, pull up a chair, and let's get real. This is Unmasked. Today on Unmasked, we are joined by John David Gregory. He has lived in worlds that most men never overlap. Competitive athletics, the U.S. Navy, Hollywood security, and the church. But behind the roles and achievements was a deeper struggle. Childhood abuse, identity confusion, addiction, and the quiet pressure to keep performing. He is the author of The Faceless Man, a raw account of how broken identity forms, how masks are built, and how God met him in the dark season in Los Angeles that changed everything. Today, we're not here to relive headlines. We're here to talk about what abuse does to a man's identity and how masks follow us into adulthood. And finally, what real freedom has looked like on the other side. Thank you, John, for joining us today here on Unmasked and being willing to share your story and trust the Unmasked community with it.
Well, thank you for having me. As you was reading that, it hits me every time. When I listen to that, I'm like, wow, he's talking about me. And I just immediately think of what a graceful God that I have and serve, because I shouldn't be on this podcast with you right now. So I'm honored to be here and very grateful. And, I'm trying to live my life at this point just to share this message, with as many people as I can, because I believe that so many men are trapped in that mask, that are trapped in loss of identity. And I'm looking forward to just, touching base and letting the world know my story.
Before we get into the darkest parts, I want to set the foundation. Growing up in a conservative Christian home and being adopted, what did that do to your sense of identity early on? And what story did you start telling yourself about who you really were because of it?
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you again for having me. This story, it really begins during my childhood. It started even before I was born. And what I mean by that was I found out a few years ago that my birth mom, who she was, and I found out the story because I'm adopted. And my birth mom she met my dad in a rural town in Kentucky, and they had a little fling. She came from one side of the track. He came from the wealthy side of the track. And lo and behold, at the blink of an eye, here I come. So with that, I found out that she had to hide me, and her parents did not want her to be with him. Neither parents did. And so they shoved her away in a home for unwed mothers. And this is 1969, in the heat of abortion, debate. But she was told that if she did this, she had the baby, they were going to take me away immediately. Oh, right at birth. Wow. I'm telling you, I've never said this before, but it just hit me. It just hit me right at birth. It started. I was stripped away from my mom, and I was put in a room where no one, I'm sure a room full of other babies. And She was not allowed to see me. And for 3 months, I had no home as a baby. Just the care of the attendants at the facility, wherever that was. So she had told me that she did get a chance to peek through a double glass and got a chance to see me, but that was it. And she said it was just devastating for her because I ended up meeting my birth mom a few years back, that's another story in itself. I'm not going to divert off on that story, but 'cause that's a whole other hold on. But all that to say, I believe kind of that feeling of rejection and that feeling of abandonment started early, even as a baby, not knowing who I was, who's for me, who loves me, and whatnot. So I was adopted by two amazing people, my mom and dad, John David Sr. and Martha Gregory. May they rest in peace. I love y'all. Both have passed away now, but they gave me an amazing life. My dad started me off young, just discipline. And we grew up in the Baptist church. And it was, I always tell everybody it was Sunday church, Wednesday youth group, Sunday school, and basketball. I mean, that was my life. I would just go in the driveway and just get shots up and just get shots up. And he would always say, "Don't leave on a miss." Mom would say, "Get inside for dinner." And I would grab the ball and run, and he's like, he'd meet me at the door. And he said, "Did you make your last shot?" I go, "No." He's, "Get out there." So I had to go do one of my, infamous 3-point shots that later I would be so good at in high school until I made it, and then I could come back inside.
Interesting. Did that message become fuel for you, or did it just add additional pressure?
I've lived by that motto my whole life: never leave on a miss, because that is so deep, because it's more than a basketball message. It's it's willing not to quit. It's willing when you're down, when everybody else abandons you. It's willing to keep going, keep fighting, and keep going for your dreams. So during this season of life, my parents had a best friend. They came over, a couple, and they would bring their son, who was many years older than me. This is where the trauma began, even deep for me.
When you say trauma began there, what did it teach you to believe about yourself as a boy? And what did it train you to do emotionally? Did it teach you to fight, freeze, perform, disappear? What did it teach you?
I remember them telling me I didn't understand what being adopted was. So that was already like it was a weird feeling for me to go, my mom gave me up and you guys adopted me. Okay. As a young boy, it was hard to understand. And then this boy would come over and he introduced pornography to me for the first time. I never didn't know anything. It's kind of like, I would say it's like Adam and Eve in the garden when they said, he's like, "Who told you were naked?" It's like, I didn't know what this was. Of course I knew male, female, all these things, but I did not understand what all that was. So I started seeing it, and this would go on and on and on for years, to the point, I mean, I could never say anything. I hated every time I knew they were coming over. I was just like sick. I tried to fake sick at times. This is the kind of thing that was just so traumatic for me as a young boy. And what it did is there's a cause and effect. And the effect from that was anger. And I had this real explosive anger in me that started to develop, and just being angry all the time. And even though I'm in church, I would have these like highs and lows, and to the point where I would be on a basketball court and a ref would call a foul on me and I would explode on the ref. Or I would come out and I would just kick a chair and let it go flying and cuss somebody out. And my dad was like, "What is wrong with you? I'm going to pull you out of sports." And everything. And they talked to me, they made me have counselors, but I would never tell anybody. They're like, "Why are you so angry? What's wrong with you?" So that followed me to high school, or excuse me, right, 8th grade year. I am like one of the top basketball and football players in the city, in Louisville, Kentucky, in the Catholic school system. I ended up going to a Catholic school because at the time in the 80s, and that was like the best school systems in Louisville, Kentucky at the time for private schools. We were playing another team who had a lot of players that were going to a high school that I was considering going to. So my team played them. We beat them. After the game, I'm talking to some of their other players, and their coach walks up to me and goes, "Hey, I'm having these guys over at my house later. I heard you're considered coming to the school. You should come hang out with them." and get to know them. I told my parents, they said, yeah, you should do that. So I went over there, pizza, sodas, everything was innocent until everybody started leaving one by one by one. I'm still in my like shorts that I had on from the game. I'm in a uniform and I'm sitting on the couch. Next thing you know, everybody's gone. He's like, I'll take you home. You don't have to tell your mom, I'll tell her, I'll bring you home. Okay. I'm like literally sitting there going, are you kidding me? Right? Like this is really happening to me again. Like, and this time it's a grown man and I'm an eighth grader. As I always say, and I literally just had to close my eyes and try to get through it as quick as I could. And some people go, well, why didn't you just punch him or say, get off me or whatever? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know. All I know is during that time, I was like frozen. When these things would happen, I would freeze. So that would go on. And then I ended up getting into the high school. I did go to that same high school with all those kids. Lo and behold, that guy gets a job as a coach there. And the whole time, it was just creeping me out the whole time. I mean, I hated it. And he would always try to get me to come over and do stuff. And, I mean, it was like, man, I had to like literally run from this guy for 4 years. So all that to say, when I got my senior year, here I am. I'm this star athlete. I'm doing well. My dream since I was a kid was to play basketball at the University of Kentucky. Tom Macy was my mentor during the summer. He played at Kentucky. He's All-American and Olympics and played for the Phoenix Suns. And his father mentored me too during the summers and would teach me. And I mean, I learned everything, even how to shoot from the Macy's. And that was it. I'm playing for Kentucky. But my senior year didn't go the way I was hoping it would. Again, I had all these highs and lows. I would play really good, play really bad. I had ankle injuries. I was dealing with so much personal trauma. Just did not go the way I wanted. Didn't get recruited like I thought I would. And so my mom insisted that I go away to a small Christian school in Indiana called Anderson University, right outside by Ball State. But I was there, and as soon as I heard Kentucky was going to have walk-ons, I told my parents, I'm going to pack up, I'm going to withdraw from Anderson, and I'm going to go enroll at University of Kentucky. We're not paying for it. I said, I don't care. I was like, I'll do it myself, and I enrolled at UK. But Sean Woods was like one of my good friends. He was the point guard on that team, and he kept saying, "You're gonna make it. You're gonna make it. You're gonna make it, man." And I was the last man cut on that team. Um, Anyways, so you can only imagine the trauma that I was experiencing. Again, my dream is shattered, and I was like, I gotta wear Kentucky across my chest. Later, it's wanting to wear Batman, but I have to wear Kentucky, and so I was an all-state football player, honorable mention. So I went over there to the football program and Bill Curry was the coach at the time. I said, I'd like to kick because I kicked in high school. They threw me a ball and said, let me see what you do. And I just put it and boom. They were like, you're good. Come on in. It wasn't even a tryout. It was kind of like, who'd you play for? I said, Trinity. They made a phone call. They're like, yeah, okay, you're good. You're in. So I was able to walk on the University of Kentucky football team for that year. And deep down this whole time, I mean, again, that sounds all great on the outside. This has been everybody looks at me, your life is great. Man, now you're at Kentucky and yeah, that's great. But inside I am dying. Inside I am ripped. I've been stripped from all this abuse that has happened to me and the shame and the guilt. Because then the alcohol started in college. I started drinking, just the sexual immorality. I would, started sleeping with all these girls and just trying to make myself feel good for all the pain that I was going through and dealing with, and even the disappointment of not making the Kentucky team. Till one night after a Kentucky football game, we're all dancing in the bar, and next thing you know, the song Vanilla Ice comes on, Ice Ice Baby, and man, all the team, they're like, John, get out of here. So they called me the Iceman. That was my nickname because at the time they thought I looked like the guy from, Top Gun, Val Kilmer. Has always been a kind of a comparison. So this guy walks up and hands me a card at the bar and he's like, hey, how'd you like to make money doing that? So 10 years I spent in the male review dance business. I was a male dancer, actually ended up owning my own group as well. I mean, here I am ready, playing in Kentucky, doing everything, and just I derailed. And it wasn't until and that's all detailed out in the book and not going into that whole span, but you can only imagine that life for 10 years. And just I can remember though very clearly walking off stage probably every night, just the pain that I would feel and the hiding behind the mask of just what I was doing, and I would have to perform and everybody thought I was the best. They thought I was, "Oh, man, you're the best. You're amazing, man." And I had women, I had money, I had everything I that seemed what you want in that moment, but I was so empty. And in the middle of all that, I would always say, I always wore a cross, and some people would call that hypocrisy. "Oh, you're a hypocrite. Why do you wear a cross? You're not even following the Lord." And I'm like, I know he's with me, and they would always roll their eyes at me and whatnot, but I didn't care. But I'd always still feel like that the Lord stayed with me because I'd given my life to the Lord as a boy and got baptized, but of course backslid for so many years. But I knew the Lord had never left me, and He would always. I'm telling you, I would feel His presence even in the dirtiest, darkest times of my life. Fast forward, I ended up leaving that and coming out to Hollywood. And history, it's like these cycles would keep repeating themselves. I'm going out for auditions. I mean, I'm working on daytime soap operas. I would have casting directors hitting on me. Next thing you know, one says, "Hey, come over to my house. I've got these big time people coming over, all these," and he started naming celebrities and everything. And I get there and I'm the only one there. Next thing you know, there's alcohol there. I'm doing, okay, I'll have a few drinks. Then he busts out this stuff I'd never seen before in my life. He called it Tina, which later I thought was crystal meth. I didn't know what that was. He's like, "Here, just try a little," and I was scared to death of drugs. But I was like, "Okay." Finally, I just gave in. I was wasted, and I did it, and I couldn't stop. It was like there was 2 voices in my head, one screaming, "Stop," and the other one saying, "Go ahead, do whatever you want." So it's kinda similar to my past. But this time I was under the or intoxicated with that drug. That just absolutely wrecked me. I remember being so devastated. I went home and I remember so grossed out. I remember cleaning myself in the shower, just getting on the floor crying, very suicidal. I just thought, I want to kill myself. I want to die. How can I'm thinking of ways I could die, kill myself. I just felt I was so disgusted with myself to the point where, you know what, he called me and he's like, "Oh, sorry, they didn't come. Why don't you come over again? They're gonna come this time." Same things happened. This time, I ended up snatching some of the drug and took it home. I was so humiliated again with myself that I did so much I wanted to kill myself. So I'm literally sitting there in the apartment thinking my heart's gonna come out of my chest, and this is the moment when it's like, I'm telling you that God showed up. It was like I tell everybody, gets me emotional. It's like God, I have this visual of this moment where I feel like God just said, "Enough," and He left His throne to come down and rescue me. Because in that moment, my heart was coming out of my chest, and I remember the I was like, "I'm dying," and it was going so fast. I was like, and I was like, tears are coming down my eyes, and I remember crying out, saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die alone in this apartment. No one's gonna find me forever." I'm like, "My mom's gonna be devastated." I started thinking about all the stuff. And I was like, and I cried out to God because that's the only thing I knew to do. And for whatever reason, He decided to come down and visit me in that moment. All I know is in that moment in my room, I felt a heat hit me like a blow. I said, this is how I describe it. Blow dryer, that hot air. And then I felt like and then I felt like oil going over my head, oil and heat from like hot air. And it was in that moment I felt just this amazing peace that hit me. And I remember thinking to myself, this is what death is. I'm dying. This is it. I'm dying. I'm stepping out. And I don't know how much time transpired between that moment. So all I know is in the matter of moments, I snapped out of it and I ran into the bathroom and we're checking my pulse. I was like splashing water on my face. Am I alive? Am I dead? Oh my God, am I going to go back in the room and see me laying on the floor? Am I out of my body? What's going on? No, I was completely sober in like a moment's time. I had done it before many times and that stuff stayed, man. It would be in me for 4 or 5 days later. I could still feel the effects, still get the jitters and feel everything. But I'm telling you, at that specific moment, it like flushed through my body and it was like I was a new person. And I remember just busting down crying, my eyes out. And it was so wild because at the same time, I got a phone call from an old friend and he had called me and he was like, "Man, I just woke up. I was going to work, thought I needed to call you." And he lived in Carson City, Nevada. And it's my friend Jerry. And he's like one of the biggest franchisee owners there for Domino's Pizza. Great friend I'd met in a prior business endeavor. And he said, "Are you okay?" And I broke down, told him everything. I said, "Man, I'm a fake. I'm such a fake. I've lived, I came out here, but dude, you don't even know me. You met me at a business meeting before, but man, I'm like, I struggle with my sexuality. Now I said, I was abused. I went through this. I'm drugs, alcohol. I've done so many horrible, horrible, horrible. I don't even know where to begin now." And he's like, "Don't do anything. I'm gonna get you out of there." Came and got me out and took me to his town for a summer. And it was even in that moment there, man, where, God turned some things around for me. But it's so wild, just like everyone that reads my story goes, and here's where he starts to ascend and things are good. God's grace, I understand it. And it's not this, permission to just do whatever you want. But what it for me, it is where God had empathy and sympathy and compassion for me, knowing my struggles, knowing what I went through, and decided to show me grace in a moment where I should be dead. Why? I believe he's got something he wants me to do. Or because, and and I say this like very humbly because I know there's people that haven't made it. They haven't come out of those situations and they've passed away and that's why I don't say this like trying to puff myself up like I think I'm all that because I don't. I think I'm a piece of, and why would you save me? Why, God? Why? Why me? There's so many other people out there. I was so lost in this. And I really felt it was the answer I got was because this is where I have to share this piece because I started messing around with this girl in Carson City, I'm back to my old ways a little bit. And finally she goes, "Let's go to church." And I'm like, "I don't want to go to church." And I go to church and I hid in the bathroom during the service and she was so mad at me. And I came out and the pastor walks up to me and he says, this is why I know why God's given me this grace, because he said, "Young man, how are you?" And I was just like, ugh, here we go. I remember doing this. "I'm good. I'm good. Thank you." He's like, and he called me son. He was like, "Son," and he put his hand on my shoulder. And normally if a man put his hand on me, it would make me a little jumpy because of what happened. I was like, I almost want to punch you if you're a man and you did that to me. Because of the abuse. But I didn't, and it felt warm. And he looked me in the eye and he said, "It broke God's heart the day that happened to you and your kid when you were childhood, that childhood friend and that coach." And I'm just like, and immediately I was like mocked him with my hair on fire. I looked at that girl that I was messing around with and I thought, how dare you? But here's the thing. I never told her. I never told anybody. I was like, and I literally broke and I fell into the man's arms and they started praying for me. And I know they probably delivered me from a lot of junk that moment because I felt it. And a lot of prayer, laying on the ground, some deliverance. And I remember standing up, feeling like 100 pounds lighter and just totally moved and knowing that God was real. And it was even in that moment where like I could start to hear the voice of God. I tell people, they said, "When did you start really hearing the voice of God?" I think it was in that moment because I started hearing things like, just like my calling and my purpose. And I want you to reach people, all this. I'm just like, I remember telling the pastor later, I was like, "Man, I keep hearing this in my head, like Hollywood and go reach people for Jesus." And he smiled at me and he's like, "That sounds like God." And I said, "I don't know, is it or is it the devil?" And he goes, "Well, if it's reaching people for Jesus," I seriously doubt that's the devil. So that's where I ended up going back to LA and broke off that relationship with the girl. And the more details are in the book, and there's still a few more hiccups along the way, but I'm still a work in progress. And I got to tell you that for anyone that feels like they are unseen, you know what? It's like, let me tell you something. God sees everything. Man, does he see everything? You think what you're doing in that dark room, you think what you did with that woman, you think what you did with that man, you think what you did, the alcohol that you're doing or the drugs that you're hiding, you think he doesn't see any of that. And it's just, you're in this all by yourself. Hey man, you're not. He sees it all. He sees it all. That scripture talks about, if you make your bed in hell, I'll be right there with you. And I'm telling you what, he parked up a chair and sat next to me for a long time. I wouldn't have. I'd have been like, "You're a loser. Get out of here." But he did. He parked up a chair next to me, waited patiently. People tried to tell me later on, oh, you found God, huh, John? Here it comes. He found God because he was in a low moment of his life. I'm like, man, let me tell you something. I was running from God and literally turned around and he's right there. He never left. It's not that I found him. He never left. So it was back in October of this year when at the current church I'm at, I've been married and divorced, 2 kids, and then now remarried. And my wife that I have now of 8 years, she's been like, you got to write your story. You got to write your story. Your story is nuts. You got to write your story. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to write that. It's too much. But you know what? God took me to, of course, I said he took me to the word. You confess your sins to God, you're forgiven. Confess your sins to man, you're healed. And I was like, my gosh. It like, oh, like light bulb went off. My wife said it to me and I was like, man. And one day I'm in church and it just was like an epiphany that the pastor had given me a segment of a book that he had written backstage like a week or so ago, or I mean, a week or so at that time, and had said, hey, I want you to read this part of this book that I'm writing and blah, blah, blah. He hadn't given it to anybody else. So during it, he always prays for people at the end of the service. So at the end of the service, he says he was walking around. It's so interesting who he picked out. There's people come from all over the world to our church to get prayed for. It's crazy with the miracles I've seen. And this man, he says, he was getting ready to pray for this guy. And he goes, wait a minute, where's the man I gave the book to? And I'm thinking, why didn't you just call me by my name? You know what? My wife's hitting me and she's like, he's talking about you. I'm like, me? I'm like, wait, what? And he goes, yes. And I look up and he goes, it's your time. Come to me. And you have to understand something. During all this time, I used to be in ministry during that time with my first wife. And I didn't want to, that's a whole nother segment. I got into ministry. It had been ordained. I went through some things and then had a failure again. And I'm like, I am the worst of worst. And that's why I'm like faceless man, because I'm like, who the heck am I, man? But this prophet and pastor called me out and said, it's your time. And I told God I would never be in ministry either. Done. Won't do it. I'm afraid I'll fail and make your name bad, Lord. I don't want to make your name bad. I'm going to mess up if I get in ministry. I'm scared of myself. And when he said that, he called me over and he says, I want you to pray for this man. And the man had been struggling with addiction. And I was like, I had never told any of this to my pastor, nothing. So I started praying for the guy and I was like, man, and I thought, this is crazy that God would use me in this moment, you know? But the biggest thing was when we got home, my wife, we were sitting on the couch and she said, you know what, babe? She's like, what did he say? I said, the man I gave the book to. She goes, yeah. She goes, that's what he said. But read into that. And I was like, pray about that. And I went, and then it hit me. And she goes, that's God saying the man I gave the book to, it's your time. That was on October 9th. I sat down the next day, opened up my computer, my pads, my iPhone, everything. And I said, I'm going to write my book. 2 months. Didn't stop. 6 a.m. till midnight, going. I was afraid I wasn't going to have enough. Then I had too much that I had to get chopped down. Still didn't. I finally had 360 something pages or 40 pages, but it's not even close to being my story. But that is what it is. And, you know, now I have a publisher and this guy's like put it on every platform. And I mean, it's a miracle. It is a flat out miracle. The only reason I did this book was not, do I want it to sell and do great? 100%. I'm not going to sit there and say no. I want to speak. I want to go out. But listen, I said, people have to hear this story because this story is, it's for I said this earlier on the little video short I did. I was like, you know, it's like, God takes ordinary people and turns them to extraordinary by the hardships that we experience, you know, and it's like, don't think that you're too far gone. Don't think that the mistakes you've made, that God still can't use you. I always go like this. You got a pulse? Yeah. You're going, yeah, cool. Guess what? God can use you. Let's go.
Yeah. You know, you're sharing here, and all these questions are just kind of running through my head. And so I want to jump in here and get to a few questions that I think some of the listeners may be thinking right now. Um, and so, as you've been talking about the addiction and the things that you've been going through there that you went through, you know, specifically on the addiction side, it often hides inside of high performance. We we
Does
we we make sure that we're performing in such a high thing so that people don't look at what's going on behind the scenes. So,
100%.
how did that show up for you in your life? And then how did you justify it in that time?
It you know what, it would always for me, it shows up when, right when I'm just, like, getting hit again with a million things, and that's what it popped up again in my first marriage. 15 years, working in the church, everything great, 2 kids, but got into it with the pastor. uh, that's neither here nor there, about about the way I was doing a youth service, and he didn't like something, and next thing you know, he decides to fire me on the spot. My wife was the worship leader. We had a newborn, and it devastated me. I'm like, "How could you do this?" And this was my comeback moment, supposedly, and it wrecked me, and that's where, for me, that's where in the middle of all that, it snuck back in. And, it wasn't the drugs, but it was sort of, the drinking and just, little here, little there, little here, and then at the time I was in the Navy Reserves after 9/11. So honestly, I would go away on Navy weekends, and that was my time to kinda just unwind, you know? And I kept telling myself, "Oh, it's just this one time. Oh, it's just this one time again. Hang out with the boys." And they would call me the Hollywood preacher. They kinda nicknamed me that. But then I felt like such a hypocrite, because I would be on a Friday night checking into the base, going out having some drinks with the boys, doing our drill weekend, and then Sunday when I'm like, "Hey, I wanna do a Bible study," I felt like such a hypocrite. But I did. It was my way to kinda make my justify myself, if you will. And then it's been like that that's always been kind of the Achilles heel for me, is a traumatic situation to kinda trigger something back, if that makes sense. So, and it basically my first wife, we went separate ways, and it was tough. And then it wasn't until got with the current wife that I have now, and she's like, she met me, and I was just like, I was working for a celebrity. I mean, I spent 20 years in the private security sector, and when she met me, I used to work for Kardashians and Kanye, and I mean, God's favor is this crazy, crazy favor He gives me, like in the middle of madness, and I'm in that, and I'm able to always pay my bills and take care of myself. Live in Southern California, and, and then I met Deborah, and she's like, "If you want to date me, you need to get to church, and you got to sober up." And she had a degree in psychology and addiction recovery and whatnot. So was my own personal recovery specialist, if you will. And, I had a few hiccups here and there, nothing too bad, but just moments where I just sit down, like, I just want to do it again. But
Yeah.
she's been very graceful for me. And I've, been walking a pretty clean path for quite a while. But what I asked God, I said, "Why does this not leave me?" I've been in church environments, I've been in places where it says I'm healed, been delivered, and I believe it. But yet Friday night rolls around, and all of a sudden, I get some bad news. My kids are pissed at me. They yell at me, and I'm hurt. And I'm like, I just want to disappear for a little while. So, and I asked God, I said, "Why does this continue? Why won't you take this from me? It's not fair." And I tried everything. And he just said, "Son," and when he says son, I know he's being serious. He says, "My grace is sufficient for you." And I was like, and he took me to the scripture where, and a lot of people, you know what? Everyone can have their differences on doctrine, but all I know is this scripture, a light lit up for me, and it spoke to my heart, and talking about the thorn in the flesh. And I know a lot of people talk about that. I've seen so many arguments about it. And I always go, well, I know how this relates to me, and I believe God shared this part with me, that he's left it there. And that's gone against, and that makes some of the people over on this side of ministry that I've been around that don't like that statement because you're whole, you're good. And I'm like, ah. And then over here, well, I don't like that. You're taking it out of context. And I'm like, and I'm like, let me tell you what I believe the Holy Spirit shared with me, John David Gregory. That's all I can say. You, I don't know. Me, that thorn has stuck there because it's a reminder that I need.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
And I humbly say that I have not arrived, that I am walking this out day to day. And it's not the end, it's the beginning of the end. I always say, excuse me, it's the end of the beginning. And now I'm living my day out. And each day that I share this story, that I walk this walk, is God is putting me back together piece by piece until I go be with him. I know that. And for those that have had I am delivered and I am free for over 20, congratulations. Me? I'm in this battle daily, brother, and it's a fight. But today I'm good. And by the grace of God, here I stand. The faceless man, I say no more, because now I know who I am in Christ. And I'm not going to let that sucker have me put that mask, because that's what they did. The enemy tries to come and get you to put that mask back on. John, put the mask back on. Come on, just put it back on and disappear for a little bit. Come on.
You described this miraculous deliverance in the church and the prophetic word that shifted everything when that happened. When that happened, what changed inside of you, not emotionally or structurally? And how did your thinking and your habits and really your identity begin to change and realign at that point?
You know, there's those two instances where I call like those divine moments. Well, like that one in Carson with that pastor. It was like, for me, it was kind of, and this was kind of a supernatural moment for me where, excuse me, where I'm like, I don't want to do that no more. Like I literally, like I just wanted to listen to tapes. I'd find ministers, and at the time showing my age, but I would just find cassette tapes and listen to ministers on cassette. And I was hungry for God. It was a shift. And that was a big deal for me. I went from stripper, hungry for God. I just wanted to listen to the word. Don't want to do that no more. That's weird. Even my friends were like, dude, are you okay? What's wrong with you? You know what? Even to the point where I had this hot girl I was with, and she's the one that took me to church. And let me tell you, she was hot. And I was like, I can't do this. What? I took you to church. I'm like, yeah. But there was something that I can't explain that started that shift where it was like here, and then I started going down this path. You know, the and for the moment with I believe with that prophetic moment was like, for me, it was like very foretelling, because even the fact that even the man had an addiction, and I was supposed to pray. I felt like this was foretelling because I'm praying for a man that had an addiction. I've been in that situation before where I had the prayer too, but at the same time, I'm writing a book about all of this as well. So this was kind of like my launching pad. So for me, it's like a divine moment. I don't. It's hard really to describe because it's something shifts in your mind. Like your mind, it's like a messenger from heaven. And the only way I can think of is like, finally it gets to you. It's like it finally arrives. Like the email finally shows up that it's been trying to get to you for years, and it goes boom. You've got mail. And it's like, oh my gosh. And I read it and I'm like, it's kind of like, thank you, Lord. I feel like the Lord just gave me this. Kind of like the children of Israel when they're wandering and wandering and wandering, yet they were so close to the promised land the whole time. It's these kind of it's these it's these kind of things that happen where it's like that divine. It's a divine unction that happens, and it is. It's again, in that regard, for me, it was a divine unction that happened. You know,
So after
I'm on both sides of that thing.
after these things happened, there's a rebuilding process that kind of had to start in your life. Walk us through briefly what it took to start rebuilding your
Mhm.
life
It's
on
great.
a day-to-day basis.
The first thing you have to do is change your environment. Yeah, for me, it was like I remember when I got back to LA, I'm going back out to that moment. I got rid of my phone. I got rid of my phone number at the time. I think I had a pager. I'm dating myself, but I got rid of all that, changed everything, and started brand new. All the old, I had to just cut off everyone from that past because I didn't want any chance of possibly slipping back into that direction. And at the time, I dove into church. It's like I'm a very my mom always said that I haven't she actually was I dove right into church. Like I got involved in this local church. I mean, I was there when the doors opened. I'm sweeping floors. I was armor bearing for the pastor. I mean, I was doing everything. It was like my mom called me and she's like, "Son, you have this personality where you just go all in every you need to balance this out a little bit." And I didn't listen to her. But I was just like, I felt safe when I was at the church because I was afraid of myself. So I just dove into church and I loved it. I loved every second of it and changed my environment. And it was that where I met my first wife, and she was a worship leader. And, we ended up getting married and dove in. And the next thing you know, after faith, was a youth pastor and taking care of the pastor's kids and all these kinds of things. So, it was like you have to change your environment and the people that you're around. Like I like what my pastor says, like you wanna know, I can tell you exactly who you are. You know how? I don't need a prophetic word from God. You know how I do it? I just pull up 5 people that you hang out with. I'll tell you exactly who you are. Pretty easy. So that for me was a big one. And I wanted to have men of God, family men. I didn't need to have people, that are struggling in different places. I could talk to them, be friends with them, but we ain't hanging out. I had to really just radically kind of change that environment for myself. So, and then even on the other element, I guess it's like even on the before like even starting this book, it's like, it's really getting for me, it was getting over like fear of I was nervous to tell the story because I was afraid people like I had to share the details of this story, not to glorify sin, not to sensationalize it. And I felt like God said, I want you to tell it because it's freeing for me because I've hit it.
So when you think about your book, you mentioned that you wrote it in basically 2 months after he told you to do this, which having written a book myself and it took me several years, I think about writing one in 2 months and it's just crazy to even think about. Why do you think that God asked you to put the language to your story so quickly? And what did writing it expose inside of you that maybe you hadn't fully processed yet?
I think that he wanted me to get it out so quickly because again, to me, it comes back all to the love of the Father that he has. I think he's seen some suffering in me and a lot of and I feel like yes, there's people this book needs to reach, but I believe that the true why it was like, get this done, because I had started to slow. Maybe there was some glimpses of maybe going back again and temptations and just feeling down. I was struggling with depression and my kid, all this stuff was going on. And I'm just like, God, I need to, like, what do you want from me? And I feel like it was a divine unction for him to say, one thing I know, when you start helping others again, it brings you freedom. And I feel like it was a real big deal. And for him to really push that in me to get it done. And also, let's be transparent about this. I think, of course, every generation says this, but I think Jesus is coming soon, man. And I don't know what day it is or the time, but there's that. At our church, we say Maranatha, the year of the Lord is at hand. And that could be 100 years. But we believe, and I'm just believing with myself that it's a holy reverential fear of God that says we have to do what we're created to do earth is short, heaven is eternal. We've got to get this message out. And I really believe that there's people's lives in the balance, and God, he needed me to get that out quickly. Literally life and death, as you know, and especially it's, because my story is, it's each segment. There's addiction, there's this, there's sexuality, there's sexual confusion, identity. There's all, the stripper stories, all these things I've done. It's like, and coming back all around, even in ministry. I mean, I was shredded in a ministry, shredded, and how do you get through that? It's like, I feel like there's nothing surprises me anymore. I feel like I can speak to different areas and people that have gone through so much trauma in every area of life.
What did writing it expose inside of you and allow you to be able to process?
Man, let me tell you, I sat at this table inside my house and cried so many nights writing this. I would take the computer and shut it and weep. And especially going through the childhood stuff, that was the hardest for me. Now my parents are no longer here, so that's been tough. And it showed that for me, one, I still had, again, that's why I realized with this book that, and this is humbling to say, because I've always been, I'm healed, I'm restored, I'm redeemed. But it was like God broke me down to show me that I'm still a work in progress. My story is not the faceless man, and now I'm king of the world, and brother, you need to get right with the Lord, and sister, come to the Lord today. Watch me. I'm who you should follow. Oh no. It's brother, sister, follow him. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to pray to God that I finish this life strong. But at the end of the day, if I fail, please don't keep your eyes on me. Promise me you'll keep them on him. That's what I told my kids. Your dad is going to do everything he can by the grace of God to continue to walk and be tough and follow the Lord Jesus Christ my whole life. But you know what? If I slip and fall again, which I hope I don't, I said, please don't blame God. Don't. Keep your eyes on him.
I have a couple quick questions for you to kind of wrap up this episode. But before I get to these questions, I want to give you a chance here real quick. What is the name of the book again, and where can people find it? And then if they want to find out more about you, where can they find you online?
That's awesome. Yeah. You can go to johndavidgregory.com, JohnDavidGregory, johndavidgregory.com. It kind of has my bio there. It has a couple links to the book. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and it has all kinds of others. And also all my social media links are on that website as well. I really hope people follow me on YouTube. I just opened up this YouTube channel, and I've been given some advice to start to share some clips daily, 2-minute clips of inspiration stories from the faceless man, just to try to encourage people and inspire people, that you're not alone, that, I've walked through some stuff, and hey, there's someone out there maybe you can relate to. So that would be awesome.
Perfect. Well, I'll leave a link to his website in the show notes, and you can find all those other links there. So a lot of people that are out there that are listening may appear successful on paper, but privately they're struggling with identity, sexual brokenness, shame of their past, you name it. What would you say to the person out there, the man out there, who looks strong but feels invisible?
I'd say you're not alone. I'd say, brother, it's like being in a room like this and the spotlight's on you and you got success. It's like people looked at me, successful, been this, I've worked with these people, all the names they want to say. And you feel so alone because you're hiding behind the shame. And all of a sudden, I believe they turn on the light. You look around. Him. I can't tell you how many people I've had openly. Actually, I've had so many people reach out to me. I've had transsexuals reach out to me. I've had homosexuals reach out to me. People, other addiction. I mean, different people to say, hey, you know what? I might not agree with your religion, but your story rocked me. and it's making me think. And that's what I tell them. Listen, you're not alone. A lot of these people that we judge and look at, I'm not condoning, but I'm saying you don't know what they've been through. And I would say more than most of them have been through some kind of traumatic situation. So to that man, I'd say, hey, brother, hey, sister, you are not alone. There's people out there like me. And the second thing I would say, oh my gosh, confess your sin to God. You'll be forgiven. Share your story with a brother. You don't have to be like me and come tell the whole world. That was my choice at 56 years old to start to do this, because I needed to do this for myself, because I felt like this is a safeguard for me to even stay where I need to stay and be held accountable. But you need to share. You need to share your story with somebody so you can start to heal again.
So for the person that's out there, I love to leave my listeners with an action step, something that they can do right now to begin moving forward. And so for the person that's out there that's listening and they recognize now that they've been wearing a mask, maybe they've been wearing one for years. What is one specific action that they can take today, this week, to begin dismantling and taking off that mask? And I'm not looking for a vague spiritual answer, but really a concrete step that will move them forward in freedom.
Find somebody you trust and tell them. Find somebody you trust and say, hey, like my friend that called me that day. That was the beginning step for me. I said, you think I'm A, B, and C, but I'm X, Y, and Z. And that was the beginning when I started to tell the truth. And I'm telling you, the truth sets you free. That scripture we take way too, and I'm not trying to be spooky spiritual with this, but I'm telling you, it begins by you sharing this and telling somebody. If you can't, we weren't created to just bear all of this stuff. And as you start to share and come out, and you're not venting, and I'm not saying what's the old saying, give your pearls to swine. That's not what I'm saying. Find somebody, pray, ask God. I dare. Find somebody, ask God, who can I share? Is there a brother that I can trust? A pastor, a leader, a friend, somebody that I can say, here's who you see me as, here's who I really am. And that, my friend, will start you on the path to recovery.
Well, John David, thank you so much for joining us here today on Unmasked and being willing to, again, just share your story so openly and honestly. I know there's a lot that you didn't get to, and we probably are just scratching the surface, but I truly appreciate you taking the time.
It's an honor. Thank you so much. I hope somebody could learn something from this today. It'd mean a lot.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining me today on Unmasked. And again, a huge thanks to my guest, John David Gregory, for joining us and sharing so openly and honestly. If something in this episode spoke to you, don't let it stop with you. Take a moment and share it with somebody else that God put on your heart, because you never know whose breakthrough might start with just that simple message. If you want more encouragement, you want to work with me one-on-one, or you're interested in having me speak at your church or event, you can find everything you need to know at wesleyfarnsworth.com. And make sure you join the Unmasked community by connecting with me on social media so that we can keep walking this journey together. Until next time, remember that grace is greater than your past, and freedom begins the moment that you choose to live unmasked. God bless you.